There are rules unofficial, unfair, and undeniable, and life follows them, not your plans. They're not written in ink or carved in stone. They're written in scraped knees, broken deals, ruined mornings, and the cold echo of silence after everything falls apart. They are the laws no teacher will teach you, no parent will prepare you for, and no motivational quote on your wall will dare to speak out loud. They are Murphy's laws. And Murphy wasn't a pessimist. He was a prophet. He saw what we deny, that the world is built on chance, friction, error, and the beautiful brutality of entropy. That things don't just happen to go wrong, they are engineered by the very fabric of time and space to fail at the most inconvenient moment. The universe runs on a strange algorithm. The more you want it to work, the more likely it is to collapse. That's not negativity, that's physics. Everything that can go wrong will. And that truth, it doesn't care whether you're ready, it just is. Now, most people recoil from this. They call it defeatist, cynical, dangerous. But here's the real danger: pretending that the world is fair. That effort always equals reward. That good people get good endings, that the system is built for you, that if you follow the script, you'll be safe. But the real world doesn't run on scripts. It runs on wet concrete and rusted gears, on missed calls and accidents, on sudden loss and slow betrayal. It runs on the forgotten fact that life doesn't owe you a damn thing. Not love, not clarity, not justice, not a single moment of peace. And the longer you wait for fairness, the more it devours you. So what do you do when you wake up and realize the universe is rigged for collapse? You adapt. You stop wishing the world were different, and you start becoming different in the world. Because Murphy's Law isn't here to punish you, it's here to prepare you. The hidden gift of these cruel, unspoken rules is that they force you into strength, not the gym slogan kind of strength, not Instagram toughness, real strength, the kind forged in disaster, the kind that doesn't just survive the storm but becomes part of it, the kind that knows if the game is chaos, then your only chance is to learn to move inside the spiral, eyes open, fists clenched, and heart unbreakable. You see, when everything goes right, you learn nothing. But when everything goes wrong, you see, you learn where the weak points are. You see what breaks first. You find out which of your beliefs were lies. That's the tuition of pain. That's the curriculum of failure. And the more you fail, the more fluent you become in the language of survival. But most people run from this. They pray for ease. They negotiate with misfortune like it's a reasonable god. They think if they just visualize hard enough, the machine of life will spare them. But the truth is, the machine doesn't care. It never did. It never will. So stop asking for comfort. Start building for catastrophe. That's the real secret no one tells you. The ones who thrive are not the ones with the perfect plan. They're the ones who expect the collapse, who smile when the lights go out, who've trained in the dark long enough to see clearly without help. They don't just react to failure. They build with it. They shape it into armor, into wisdom, into hunger. They're not immune to disaster. They're just fluent in it. And you must become fluent too, fluent in chaos, fluent in confusion, fluent in loss, not fluent in complaining or blaming or freezing, but fluent in movement, fluent in restarting from nothing, fluent in silence, fluent in carrying your own weight when no one's left to lift it with you. Because life is not a contract, it's a crucible. And you are not a consumer of comfort. You are a builder of resilience. Every broken plan you've ever watched fall to ash was proof you're in the real world now. Welcome. This is where the game begins, not in your dream board or your journal or your morning affirmation. But here where rent is due, where hearts break, where silence lasts longer than you wanted it to, here where things go wrong because that's what things do. And it's in this hard terrain, this rigged simulation, this messy field of accidents where something incredible happens. You start to change. Not overnight, not cleanly, but deeply. You stop being surprised when the knife twists. You stop waiting for peace to begin. You start designing your own mental fortress. You stop outsourcing your power to perfect conditions. And suddenly, the rules start to look different. Not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped trying to outsmart the collapse and you started building beneath it. And now, when the storm hits, you don't cry out. You step in. You've already waterproofed your mind. You've already buried your excuses. You've already tasted ruin, and you know you're still standing. That's what Murphy never said out loud, but what he meant. Yes, everything will go wrong, but the right person will rise anyway. That's not pessimism. That's power. That's not fatalism. That's freedom. Because once you stop expecting the world to save you, you start saving yourself. And in a world built to trip you, to tempt you, to trap you in cycles of blind optimism and deeper despair, there is nothing more dangerous than the soul that knows how to move forward when everything is falling apart. So let the rules be unfair. Let the timeline be messy. Let the plan burn to the ground. You've got fireproof skin now. Let chaos test you. Let pain sharpen you. Let failure become your forge. This is not the end. It's not even the beginning. This is the moment you stop waiting for the storm to pass, and you learn how to walk through it. Not by avoiding it, not by pretending it isn't there, but by realizing you were built for this. Now rise. It always happens when you least expect it. The moment you let your guard down. The day you feel just a little too sure. The hour you finally think you're safe. That's when it cracks. That's when it falls apart. The email that doesn't come. The call that ruins everything. The tiny error that ripples into a disaster. Not because you did something wrong, but because that's how it works. That's how it always works. You can fight it. You can call it unfair. You can scream at the sky and punch the ground, and the universe will keep spinning. The gears will keep grinding. The system will stay silent. No explanation. No warning. No apology. It's not personal. It's not targeted. It's just the law. The law that says, if it can go wrong, it will. And, more importantly, it will go wrong when it costs the most. This isn't bad luck. This isn't misfortune. It's the architecture of entropy, the slow drift toward disorder that governs all things, bodies, plans, systems, machines, dreams. The wires will fray, the bridge will give, the tire will blow, and it will happen when the stakes are highest. Why? Because that's when you notice. That's when it hurts. You prepare for the exam, and the power goes out. You get the loan, and the market crashes. You open your heart, and they walk away. You fix the leak, and the roof collapses. It's not that life hates you, it's that life isn't thinking about you at all. There is no cosmic fairness department. There is no secret control room making sure things balance out. The only thing you can count on is that, at the worst possible moment, something will fail. And yet, that's not a curse, that's your edge. Because if you can stop expecting the timing to make sense, if you can stop relying on the outcome to cooperate, If you can stop believing the lie that next time it'll be easier, you gain something more valuable than luck: resilience. The people who thrive in chaos don't have better timing. They have better reflexes. They know the punch is coming, they just don't know when. So they stay alert. They build habits, not hopes. They check the backup. They read the small print. They know that every smooth day is just a delayed ambush, and when it hits, they're ready. Not because they knew exactly what would break, but because they trained as if anything could. There is a brutal kind of wisdom that only comes from this mindset, the wisdom that knows most of life is improvisation. You'll never have all the information. You'll never be perfectly positioned. You'll never be guaranteed a clean win. So you train for friction. You train for mess. You train for the plan not working because 9 times out of 10, it won't. And the one time it does, that's not grace. That's a delay. Ask anyone who's ever built something real. A business, a body, a legacy, a life. They'll all tell you the same truth. It broke 100 times before it stood. You can do everything right and still get wrecked. You can follow the checklist and still fail. You can be overqualified, overprepared, overcommitted, and still lose. But here's what they won't tell you in school, or in your job interview, or in the glossy pages of self-help books. Losing is the point. Because when things go smoothly, you get soft. When things go wrong, you get forged. The missed train teaches you urgency. The rejected pitch teaches you humility. The failed launch teaches you patience. The betrayal teaches you boundaries. The accident teaches you attention. The silence teaches you presence. You think the world is testing you. Number, it's teaching you. And the cost of that lesson is paid in discomfort, in delay, in disaster, in defeat. Every time something falls apart, something is rebuilt inside you, but only if you're awake. Only if you stop asking why it happened and start asking what you're supposed to learn from it. Some people fall and stay fallen. Some people fall and look around for someone to blame. But a few, the rare ones, they fall and listen. They listen to the silence after the collapse. They listen to the friction that preceded the break. They listen to their own voice, shaking but alive, whispering, again, this time, smarter. And that's where it starts. That's where real strength is born, not in the gym, not in the win, not in the applause, but in the ugly, embarrassing, unplanned, untweeted moment when everything goes wrong and you're still standing there. Not because you're fearless, not because you're lucky, but because deep down, you expected the collapse and built yourself around it. That's the mindset Murphy never spelled out, but implied with every cruel little law. If the toast will land butter side down, build your table lower. If the line you pick always moves slower, bring a book. If the file will get corrupted, make 5 copies. If the person you trust can break your heart, strengthen your own. It's not paranoia, it's preparedness. It's not negativity, it's navigation. The universe is not on your side, and that's your advantage. Because once you stop hoping for favorable winds, you learn how to sail in any storm. This is not about perfection, it's about recovery. Not about avoiding failure, but mastering your response to it. And the ones who master that, they become dangerous. Because nothing surprises them anymore. Nothing stops them for long. They've been knocked down by things you wouldn't even see coming, and now they see it all. That's the real power. Not control, composure. Not luck, leverage. not guarantees. Grit. And when you live by this code, when you truly understand that failure is not an interruption but a signal, you stop fearing it. You start using it. You start welcoming the collapse, because you know it's about to teach you something your comfort never could. So when the next thing goes wrong, and it will, don't flinch, don't retreat, don't curse the sky, or the system, or yourself. Just breathe. Observe. Adjust. And remember this. You weren't made for easy roads. You were made for sharp turns. And every time something fails, you evolve. And still, we're surprised. Surprised when the engine stalls right before the meeting that could have changed everything. Surprised when the friend we trusted pulls away without a word. Surprised when the numbers don't add up, when the door doesn't open, when the dream doesn't come true. We live like we're owed smoothness. Like stability is the baseline, and chaos is a mistake. But it's not. Chaos is the rule. Stability is the illusion. You don't build your life on the assumption that everything will go your way, not if you want it to last. Because control, that's the first myth, the sweetest lie, and the deadliest one. The truth is, you're not in control. You never were. Not really. You can plan, you can prepare, you can visualize every angle, every variable. And still, one stray gust, one glitch in the code, one human error is all it takes. And suddenly you're not steering anymore, you're surviving, you're improvising, you're responding. And that's where most people break, because they thought control meant power. But power has nothing to do with control. Power is what you have after control is gone. It's what's left when the lights flicker and the path disappears. It's what shows up when the script burns, when the map fails, when the mentor quits, and there's no signal, no backup, no way out but through. That's power. The kind you can't fake. The kind that doesn't flinch. You see, control is a comfort drug. We crave it because we're terrified of pain. But Murphy's Law doesn't run on our craving. It runs on reality. And in reality, the more you try to grip everything, the more brittle you become. Try to control every conversation, and you'll fear every silence. Try to control every outcome, and you'll panic at every twist. Try to control every failure, and you'll miss every lesson. You don't win by controlling. You win by adapting. Because adaptability isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It's the ability to move when the floor shifts, to adjust when the target moves, to stay in the fight even when the rules change mid-game. The tree that refuses to bend gets snapped by the wind. But the one that moves with the storm, that one survives. That one learns the wind. That one becomes something more, then rooted it becomes wise. And wisdom is what emerges when control is stripped away, when you're naked in the chaos and forced to feel everything. It's not comfortable, it's not glamorous, but it's real. And that's what you need when the world gets real. Because let me tell you, the world will get real. It won't ask if you're ready. It won't ask if it's a good time. It will just change. And if you can't change with it, it will bury you. But if you can bend, not break, move, not panic, then the chaos becomes your co-pilot. You stop fighting it. You stop fearing it. You start learning its rhythms. And once you do that, you're no longer reacting. You're leading. That's what real leaders do. They don't hold the wheel tighter when it skids, they feel the turn. They don't cry about the fire, they learn to walk through it. They don't demand guarantees, they build systems that function in failure. And maybe the most important thing, They don't mistake order for strength. They know the strongest structures are the ones built to flex, not freeze, built with pressure in mind, built to survive the shake. This is what life is asking of you. Not to control every detail, but to trust yourself when the details collapse. Not to win every time, but to continue every time you lose. Because you're going to lose. Let's be honest. You're going to lose money, friends, confidence, momentum. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to break things. Sometimes you'll break yourself. And that's not failure. That's initiation. That's how the world lets you in, not through success, but through survival. Anyone can look good when the weather's clear. Anyone can smile when the contract goes through. But when the storm rolls in, when nothing makes sense, when the people you counted on vanish, when the plan burns down to nothing, that's when it shows. That's when you show. Not the curated version of you. Not the polished, presentable, filtered version. The real you. The one who refuses to stop. The one who stares at the ashes and says, "Fine, we rebuild." That's the energy. That's the difference between those who are occasionally lucky and those who are inevitably dangerous. Because let's be honest, life is not a fair fight. It never has been. Some people start ahead. Some people have better cards. Some people are born into resources, into networks, into safety. You can't change that. What you can change is your response. You can learn to adapt faster than they expect. You can become more resilient than they thought possible. You can be the one who doesn't fall apart when the world does. You don't have to control it all. You just have to outlast it all. And you can, but not if you're clinging to the illusion that things will go the way you planned. They won't. Not always, maybe not ever. So stop wishing for a smooth ride. Start sharpening your steering. Start becoming the kind of person who walks through uncertainty like it's familiar terrain. Because it is. Chaos is not a stranger, it's a constant companion. It's not there to punish you, it's there to push you. Push you to grow. To let go. To move smarter. To move now. You don't need more control. You need more courage. The courage to move even when you don't have all the answers. The courage to speak even when your voice shakes. The courage to stand tall in the wind, knowing it may blow harder tomorrow. That's not weakness. That's design. Because the greatest power you will ever hold is your ability to move forward without control. To step into the unknown and still choose effort. To see that everything is falling apart and still choose to build. To know that the laws of life will throw you to the ground and still choose to rise. Again, and again, and again. No matter what breaks. No matter what fails. No matter how dark it gets. You move. Because you were never here to control the world. You were here to become something that cannot be broken by it. So what happens when it all goes wrong? Not in a poetic way, not in the kind of way that makes for a good story later, but in the raw, jagged, soul-hollowing way where you're staring at the ceiling in a room that feels too quiet, with nothing left to say and no one left to say it to. When you realize the safety net was never there. When you've given everything, and still, it wasn't enough. That's when the real education begins. Not in the victory, not in the plan working, but in the rubble, in the silence after the explosion, in the slow realization that you have to rebuild from the very bottom without applause, without clarity, without certainty. See, the world has a brutal logic, and it doesn't waste time pretending otherwise. It offers no refund for your effort, no warranty on your trust, no guarantee that anything will go according to script. And if you live long enough, you'll watch every structure you depended on begin to shift. The job, the marriage, the belief system, the future you thought was waiting for you. Gone, or different, or slipping through your hands like water you can't hold. And that is the point. Not the failure, but the recognition that failure is the factory. That success doesn't come from getting it right. It comes from what you do when it all goes wrong. Because failure isn't just part of the path, it is the path. And it's not clean. It's not noble. It doesn't make you look cool. It makes you look broken, desperate, confused. But underneath all that, that's where you find your edge. That's where you begin to build something that isn't made of fantasy. It's easy to dream when things are good. But who are you when things fall apart? Who are you when you lose the thing you thought you couldn't live without? Who are you when you have to keep going and no one's coming to save you? Who are you when your name doesn't carry weight, when your wins don't buy you favor, when your strength is the only thing holding the pieces together? That version of you, the one forged in loss, in error, in silence, that's the one who survives. And not just survives, but becomes dangerous, becomes sharp, becomes unshakable. Because they've already seen the worst, and they kept walking. Most people want transformation without destruction. They want the upgrade without the uninstall. They want to grow, but not lose. They want to evolve, but not suffer. But that's not how it works. The seed dies before it becomes the tree. The caterpillar dissolves before it becomes the wings. The human breaks before it becomes the warrior. You can't skip the disintegration. You can't avoid the collapse. You have to walk straight into it and let it change you. Because here's the truth you won't find in surface-level self-help. You don't grow by winning. You grow by losing the things that were keeping you small. And sometimes the only way life can free you is to destroy what you built. That relationship that was holding you hostage, gone. That job that numbed your soul, taken. That identity you clung to, shattered. That certainty you worshipped, broken. It feels cruel. But maybe it's not cruelty. Maybe it's surgery. Maybe the world isn't trying to end you. Maybe it's trying to reveal you. Strip away the scaffolding. Remove the mask. Leave only the core, the real you exposed, vulnerable, alive. It's in that place beneath the noise, beneath the lies you told yourself, where you begin to see with different eyes. You stop measuring progress by perfection. You start measuring it by your ability to get back up. You stop chasing guarantees. You start building grit. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, watch me. That's the moment you flip the script. That's the moment you become immune not to pain, but to panic. Because now you know, just because it hurts doesn't mean you stop. Just because it's broken doesn't mean it's over. Just because it went wrong doesn't mean you're finished. It just means it's time to begin again. That's what most people don't understand. You're allowed to rebuild. As many times as it takes, you're allowed to start from scratch. You're allowed to reinvent, reroute, restart, rebuild, not because you failed, but because you survived. And survival? That's a skill, that's a power, that's a badge no one can give you, only pain can earn it for you. So when you fall, fall hard. Fall honestly. Feel the full impact. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Don't numb it. Don't fake a smile and post some glitter quote about bouncing back. Fall like it matters. Because it does. That's where your roots grow. That's where your real story begins. You don't build character by dodging failure. You build it by letting failure teach you what winning never could. You learn to think clearly while your heart breaks. You learn to move forward while the world stands still. You learn to sit in the mess, not to wallow, but to understand. And slowly, you begin to rise. Not in the same form, not with the same mind, but with a new kind of fire. The fire that doesn't come from achievement, but from having lost everything and still having the will to move. You become the kind of person who no longer fears failure because you've been through it. The kind of person who no longer needs approval because you've met yourself in the mirror of loss. The kind of person who no longer waits for permission because you've seen what happens when you hesitate. This is not about chasing success. This is about earning transformation. You want to win? Then fall. Hard. Loud. Spectacularly. And get back up with bloody hands and steel in your spine. Because the ones who rise after ruin, they're not the same people anymore. They've died to who they were and been reborn into who they're becoming. That's the cost. That's the fire. And that's the forge. And if you're standing in the middle of the wreckage right now, good. That means it's working. Good. Let it hurt. Let it burn. Let it all fall through your hands if it must, because what's meant to stay will survive the fire. And what doesn't, you never needed it in the first place. That's the difference between those who keep chasing comfort and those who rise from the ashes. One clings, the other sheds. One hides from the lesson, the other becomes it. See, most people are taught to see failure as a detour, a mistake, a step backward. But they're wrong. Failure isn't a detour, it's the blueprint. It's the layout of the terrain you're about to master. It's the floor plan of greatness sketched in disappointment, printed in regret, and handed to you in the middle of your worst moment. But you've got to stop treating it like a glitch. It's not. It's the system working exactly as it should. Because if you want to do anything real, anything that matters, the price is experience. And experience is built on one thing: what goes wrong. That deal you blew, that launch that tanked, that person who walked, that project that collapsed under its own weight, all of it is data. All of it is proof that you moved, that you risked something, that you didn't sit safely behind the glass wall of what if. You stepped into the arena, and the arena doesn't owe you mercy. It owes you revelation, because here's the truth. Every failure contains a code, a message, a brutal, clear, and sometimes soul-shattering clarity. You either learn it or you repeat it. That's what most people miss. They fall and get up the same. Same blind spots, same habits, same ego. So they crash again and again and again. Not because they're cursed, but because they refuse to decode the collapse. But not you. You're different. You're here for something more than sympathy. You're not here to be saved, you're here to be tempered. You're here to look into the smoking crater of your own failure and dig through the debris until you find the seed of wisdom it buried. You're here to make your failures expensive, because if it cost you peace, cost you time, cost you pride, then it better give you something in return. Clarity, perspective, precision. That's the deal. That's the alchemy. You give your comfort, and life gives you insight. You give your certainty, and life gives you power. The kind of power that can't be taken, because you earned it through pain. Look, no one ever learned anything by getting it right the first time. Not anything that lasts, anyway. The first success teaches nothing but arrogance. It's the second try after you've lost, after you've doubted, after you've stood in your own wreckage. That's when your work starts to mean something. Because now you know what you're up against. Now you know what it costs. And now, if you still choose to move forward, that's not hope. That's conviction. And that's the stuff the world respects. Not the first draft. Not the overnight win. Not the shallow bounce back. The grind. The quiet rebuilding. The long road nobody claps for. You want to build something unshakable? Then build it on the bones of failure. You want wisdom? Then pay for it in blood, in silence, in time. You want a voice that carries weight? Then speak from the scars, not the theories. Because no one trusts perfection. They trust the person who's been wrecked and still showed up. Still fought, still chose to give, to try, to speak, to create, to live. Let the others post their highlights. You live in the real. You show up in the dark. You speak from the gut. You know what it's like to hold shattered plans in your hands and still whisper, "Let's go again." That's not delusion, that's strength. And you'll need it because this isn't the last failure, not by a long shot. There will be more, bigger ones, more expensive ones, more personal. But here's the shift, they won't scare you like they used to. Because now, you've seen what failure is made of. You've cut it open, you've examined its insides. And you know what you find? Yourself. Not the version that pretends, not the version the world claps for, but the core. The one who keeps showing up. The one who's learning faster now. Moving smarter now. Seeing further now. Failure didn't destroy you. It revealed you. And that version of you, that one's dangerous. Because that version doesn't flinch, doesn't freeze, doesn't wait for permission. That version builds in the dark. That version leads from the front. That version fails louder because they know what it's worth. So go ahead, fall again, loudly, spectacularly. Let the world see your flaws. Let them mock your stumbles. Let them think you're done. Let them write your obituary before the work is even halfway through. You'll be too busy learning, too busy building, too busy becoming. And when you rise again, because you will, they'll ask how you did it. They'll ask how you keep going. They'll ask how you're not broken. And all you'll be able to say is, "I failed, and I paid attention." It's easy to praise strength when it's obvious. When the body is sculpted, the speech is clean, the posture proud. But real strength, it doesn't wear a label. It's quiet, ugly, sometimes, uneven, unseen. It doesn't announce itself in front of an audience. It emerges in the middle of your worst hour, when everything you thought was unbreakable breaks, when everyone you thought would stay walks, when every door you knocked on stayed shut, and you knocked anyway. That's strength, not the kind built on applause, the kind built on resistance, the kind that says, "If the world is going to be brutal, I will become unshakable." Not untouched, unshakable. Because the goal is not to avoid the fall. The goal is to not vanish in it. To feel every part of it, and then stand back up, carrying the lesson, not the wound. And that lesson is this. The world is not built to lift you. It's built to test you. So you must build yourself not to fit it, but to endure it. Stop asking why it's hard. Stop waiting for things to settle down. They won't. They never do. That's the trap. Life doesn't get easier. You either rise or you get run over. So rise. Not once. Not in a blaze of glory. Not for the camera. Rise again and again and again, quietly, relentlessly. with blood in your teeth and fire in your lungs, with no one watching and nothing guaranteed. Because this isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the last one standing. The world will glorify talent, beauty, speed, but none of that survives the long haul. The world belongs to the stubborn, the consistent, the gritty, to the ones who keep showing up when everyone else has quit. And you earn that grit the hard way, through late nights that don't pay off, through effort that gets ignored, through betrayal that makes you question your instincts, through failure so big it swallows your pride whole. And then right then you decide, not how the world sees you, not what they'll say. You decide what kind of person you're going to be, because life will present you with a million reasons to give up. Every lost opportunity, every closed door, every no-show, no call, no warning disaster that makes you doubt yourself. But all you need is one reason to keep going. One ember that won't go out. One thread you refuse to drop. One truth you've earned not from success, but from standing knee-deep in the wreckage and still choosing to build something from it. That's not motivation. That's identity. And identity doesn't come from what you say you are. It comes from what you do when everything says you're not. You say you're strong. Show me how you act when your name's not called. You say you're committed. Show me how you move when no one claps. You say you want it. Show me how you respond when you lose everything. That's where the truth lives. Not in the dream, in the grit. Because grit doesn't negotiate with comfort. It doesn't wait for the perfect plan. It gets up when the bones ache. It writes when the mind is blank. It trains when the progress is invisible. It speaks when the voice shakes. It moves no matter what. Grit is the refusal to surrender, even when surrender would make sense. Grit is the fire you feed in the dark, when no one sees and nothing changes. Grit is what Murphy never said out loud, but always implied. You're going to get hit, so get ready and hit back. Because you will get hit, again and again, by the things you didn't prepare for, by the people you trusted, by the systems that weren't built for you, by your own fear, your own mind, your own damn doubts. But you don't build resilience by avoiding the hit. You build it by taking it and not folding. Every scar, every failure, every breakdown, it's proof that you were tested. And if you're still here, you passed. You're still breathing, then you're still building. You're still hurting, then you're still human. You're still trying, then you're still dangerous. Because let me tell you something they don't teach in schools, in seminars, or in surface-level success books. The most powerful force on earth isn't talent. It's persistence in the face of failure. It's that thing inside you that whispers, "Get up," when everything around you says, "You're done." It's that refusal to die with the work still inside you. It's the decision to stand back up even if the next hit is already on its way. And if that's who you're becoming, if that's the identity you're claiming, then you don't just survive chaos. You grow teeth inside it. You start to feel it differently. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Try me." You stop flinching when it breaks and start scanning for how to rebuild. Because you don't need it to be easy. You don't need it to be fair. You don't need it to be certain. You just need one thing. The will to keep going, especially when it makes no sense to. And if you've got that, then let the system fail. Let the world lie. Let the odds turn. Let the plan collapse. Let the light go out. You'll find your way anyway. You'll write a new map. You'll build a new road. You'll become the weapon life wasn't ready for. Because grit is not just what gets you through the worst. It's what transforms the worst into the best part of your story. So don't hide your failure. Don't bury your bruises. Don't clean up the journey so it looks pretty. Let it be ugly. Let it be honest. Let it be real. Because one day, not now, maybe not soon, but one day, someone will look at you and ask how you made it through. And you'll smile and say, I didn't wait for it to make sense. I just refused to quit. They'll call it bad timing. They'll call it coincidence. They'll call it unfair, tragic, or just plain unlucky. But you'll know better. You'll know that the closer you get to something important, the more violently the world shakes. That progress doesn't arrive wrapped in calm and wrapped in a bow. It shows up disguised as collapse, as chaos, as everything going wrong at once. That's the irony of it all. The closer you are to breaking through, the louder the resistance gets. And the resistance doesn't come with flashing lights. It comes through flat tires, missed opportunities, sudden illness, forgotten deadlines, heartbreaks, betrayals, and the quiet moments where your own mind turns against you. It feels like sabotage, but it's the test. The final gatekeeper before every level up is adversity. And not just any adversity, but a very specific kind. The kind that feels personal, as if the universe has singled you out, mocked your efforts, laughed at your goals. It hasn't. It's just doing what it always does. Throwing fire at those who dare to build something in the dark. Because this world doesn't reward you for what you want, it tests whether you're willing to pay for it. And the price? It's always heavier than you expect. It asks for your certainty. It asks for your pride. It asks for your illusions. It asks for the version of you that believed this would be easy. And that's where most people stop. Not because they weren't good enough, but because they didn't recognize what was happening. They thought the universe was saying no, but really it was saying prove it. Because everything you say you want, every dream, every goal, every bold, wild, brilliant vision of a better life, it lives on the other side of interruption, of collapse, of pressure so intense it strips you down to the bone. And only the ones who keep moving through that get there. But to do that, you have to shift. You have to stop seeing adversity as interruption. You have to start seeing it as activation. Not the end of momentum, the beginning of power. Not the loss of the path, the start of the real one. Because no path worth walking goes untouched by friction. And no dream worth chasing comes without a season of disaster. That's the rule. That's the cost. That's the hidden law that Murphy hinted at but didn't need to say out loud because you feel it the moment you try something real. It's the law of inevitable resistance. The moment you move forward, life moves against you. Not to stop you, but to find out what you're really made of. And that's the moment most people miss. They get hit and think, it's not meant to be. They face a setback and say, I guess I'm not ready. They stumble and say, maybe this dream was too big. Number. That's the moment to dig in. To square your shoulders. To smile through gritted teeth and whisper, good, let's go. Because resistance is not a red light. It's a green light written in blood and written backwards. It's a signal that you're finally moving fast enough to feel the wind push back. You were never supposed to get here without bruises, without scars, without nights full of self-doubt and mornings where getting out of bed felt like war. But you did. And, you're still here. So keep going. Not despite the resistance because of it. Because every hit you take and keep walking through becomes a vote. A vote that says, I am the one who finishes. I am the one who outlasts. I am the one who bends but doesn't break. That's not ego. That's identity. And identity forged in adversity is the strongest kind there is. Because it doesn't depend on how things go. It depends on how you respond when they don't. And eventually you learn to stop expecting the path to get easier. You stop needing permission. You stop hoping for comfort. You start training for war. Not war against the world. Not war against other people. War against weakness. Against hesitation. Against the small voice in your head that says, you've done enough. Because that voice doesn't speak truth, it speaks comfort. And comfort is the enemy of everything worth having. The truth is, you haven't done enough, not if you're still breathing and the work's not finished. Not if the dream still lives and the fire's still burning. Not if the voice inside you hasn't been silenced by defeat. And if that's still alive, if even a sliver of that fire still flickers, then you owe it to the future version of you to keep going, to step through the resistance, to fail and fail louder, to rise and rise smarter. Because this is what separates the great from the forgotten. They don't take resistance as a reason to quit. They take it as confirmation they're getting close. Close to the version of themselves they've been chasing. Close to the thing they've been building in the dark. Close to the freedom they've earned through sweat, silence, and relentless forward motion. And the closer you get, the harder it gets, because it matters more. So if it's getting harder now, take that as a sign. You're not lost. You're not late. You're not broken. You're just closer than you've ever been. And what happens next, that's on you. You can flinch, fall, disappear into the sea of people who gave up when it got real. Or you can decide that no resistance is stronger than your will. That no storm is louder than your voice. That no breakdown is greater than your ability to rebuild. Because resistance doesn't mean stop. It means prove it. And now, it's your move. It doesn't feel heroic when it happens. When you lose, when you choke, when you fail in front of people who expected you to shine. When your hands shake and your voice cracks and everything you rehearsed falls flat. There's no spotlight. No music swelling in the background. Just the heavy silence of disappointment and the echo of your own thoughts circling like vultures. This is where most turn back. They fold under the weight of their own expectations. They confuse embarrassment with defeat. They think, if I was meant to succeed, it wouldn't feel like this. But it does. It always does. Because this is the part of the story nobody wants to tell. Not the polished version. Not the curated post with the caption about how failure taught me something. This is the real part. The dirty part. The part where you get laughed at. The part where you overestimated yourself. The part where you realize how far you really are from where you thought you'd be. And that moment, that raw, soul-exposing moment, is the most important one of your life. Because here's the secret. Every breakthrough is preceded by humiliation. Every triumph is built on a foundation of moments you wanted to disappear. The ones who make it, they don't avoid those moments. They collect them. They live in them. They sharpen themselves on them. You have to be willing to look stupid before you look strong. You have to be willing to fall flat before you rise clean. You have to be willing to be underestimated, overlooked, and ignored again and again while you build in silence. Because greatness doesn't announce itself. It grows in the shadows. It builds in obscurity. It learns through pain. Not just pain from the outside, but the pain of facing who you really are. The parts of you that aren't ready. the skills that aren't sharp enough, the mindset that still wavers, the ego that still bruises too easily. That pain, that is the training. Life doesn't put a crown on your head. It puts a mirror in your face. And it asks, can you look at this? Can you really see who you are without flinching? Most people can't, so they run. Run to distractions. Run to validation. Run to something easier, something safer, something more comfortable. But comfort never taught you how to endure. Comfort never taught you how to rebuild. Comfort never taught you how to fight for something when no one believes in it but you. You think you're ready to succeed? Then first, you must fail spectacularly. Not quietly, not privately, but in a way that shakes your pride, scorches your self-image, and forces you to let go of every illusion you had about how easy this was going to be. Because success is not built on wins. It's built on what you do after the loss. Anyone can talk about how bad they want it. Anyone can post about hustle and dreams and purpose. But when it breaks, when it all goes wrong, when the door slams in your face and the silence is deafening, then we see who you really are. Then we find out if you were in this for praise or for the process. Then we find out if you're chasing results or becoming something no loss can kill. You think this is punishment? You think failure means you're not ready? Failure is the proof that you're in the arena. Failure is the fire that burns away who you were and makes space for who you're becoming. Failure is not the enemy, it's the rite of passage. You want to be great? Then get familiar with failure. Invite it in. Study it. Let it teach you. Let it strip you bare until only the essential parts remain. Because everything else, the image, the pride, the fear, it was never going to carry you to the finish line anyway. Only hunger will. Only humility will. Only that quiet, terrifying moment where you decide, I am not done. That moment when you're humiliated but not broken, ashamed but not hiding, alone but not quitting. That's the fire. That's the forge. That's where legends are made. Not in the win, but in the decision to come back for more after the world said you shouldn't. After your own mind whispered, maybe this isn't for you. After you looked failure in the eye and said, you don't scare me anymore. You don't rise after a fall by pretending it didn't hurt. You rise by accepting the wound and walking anyway. You rise by owning the mess, by facing the reality, by saying, this is where I am, and I still choose to move. Because that's what power really is, choice in the face of ruin. Not control, not certainty, but the choice to try again without a guarantee that it will go any better than last time. That kind of courage? That's rare. That's real. And that's what separates the ones who fade from the ones who build something eternal. Not because they never failed, but because they learned to fail with their eyes open. To listen to the collapse. To study the pain. To extract the lesson and leave behind the shame. And if you're standing in that place right now, if you've fallen hard, let me tell you something. This is your edge. This is your leverage. This is the birthplace of your next move. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing to walk through this part without running away. Because everyone wants the crown, but few are willing to crawl through the fire with nothing in their hands but a refusal to quit. Be that one. Be the one who turns humiliation into fuel. who turns doubt into discipline, who turns failure into the foundation of something unshakable. And when they ask how you did it, how you survived, how you came back, how you didn't quit when quitting made sense, you'll tell them the truth. You failed. Spectacularly. And you paid attention. Rock bottom isn't poetic when you're there. It's not a metaphor. It's not a growth phase with gentle lighting and inspirational music. It's cold. It's isolating. It's quiet in the worst kind of way, the kind of silence that wraps around you like concrete. It's the moment you stop falling and realize there's nowhere else to go but through. No one plans to reach rock bottom. No one circles the date on the calendar and says, "That's the week I'll lose everything." But it comes, for all of us, eventually. And when it does, you're left with a simple choice: sit in the wreckage or start building with it. Because here's what no one tells you until you've lived it. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the foundation. It's where illusions die and real vision is born. It's where everything you thought mattered gets stripped away, and what's left is truth. Truth that can't be shaken by opinion. Truth that doesn't need validation. Truth that stands, even when you don't. There is a clarity at rock bottom that you can't buy, borrow, or fake. When you've lost what you thought you couldn't live without. When the mask doesn't matter because there's no audience left. When it's just you and the cold floor and the question echoing in your chest. Now what? That's when you start telling the truth. Truth about how badly you wanted it for the wrong reasons. Truth about how much of your identity was built on being seen, being praised, being perfect. Truth about how many shortcuts you took, how many times you faked the smile, how often you avoided the mirror. And in that honesty you find something new. Not hope, not yet. What you find first is responsibility. Not blame, not guilt. Responsibility. You begin to see that no one is coming. No rescue mission, no second chance couriered to your doorstep. Just you. And that terrifying, liberating truth. If you want to rise, it's on you. You can't beg your way out of rock bottom. You can't think your way out. You build your way out, one brutal, unglamorous brick at a time. A decision. A routine. A hard conversation. A small act of discipline repeated until it becomes who you are. You don't rebuild by chasing the same version of success that failed you. You rebuild by becoming someone who no longer needs the safety net, because now you've lived without it. You've been to the bottom, and you're still breathing. Still thinking. Still here. And that means you're already stronger than you were before the fall. Rock bottom teaches you that strength isn't loud. It's not charisma. It's not charm. It's grit and isolation. It's discipline without direction. It's refusing to disappear when no one is watching. Because that's the trap, isn't it? Thinking your worth is tied to momentum. Thinking your identity lives in the forward motion. And then, when the motion stops, you start to question if you were ever really moving at all. That's what the bottom does. It exposes what you built your worth on. If it was attention, now there's none. If it was money, now it's gone. If it was status, now you're just another name nobody's mentioning. So the question becomes, what's left? What's underneath the roles, the results, the resume? That's your core. That's the version of you that can't be taken away. The one that doesn't need noise to know their value. The one that doesn't need progress to keep moving. That's who you meet at rock bottom. And when you meet them, you rebuild with them. Not the old you. Not the one who chased approval. Not the one who feared stillness. Not the one who needed the room to clap before they felt brave. You rebuild with the one who chose to rise without a reason to, without proof, without praise, without a plan. Because that's the only kind of rise that lasts, the one that starts with nothing but willpower. And let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful than a person who has rebuilt themselves from rubble. Because they've faced the collapse and found out who they were without the scaffolding. Because they've watched everything familiar burn and decided to keep going anyway. They don't just survive, they become. They become dangerous. Not because they're ruthless, but because they're calm. Calm when the market crashes. Calm when the plan changes. Calm when the people leave. Why? Because they've been at the bottom. And now they carry the bottom inside them as a reminder that nothing can break them more than they've already been broken. That's not trauma. That's leverage. That's not pain. That's wisdom. Because once you know what it means to have nothing, you stop depending on anything. You stop needing the plan to go your way. You stop needing the weather to be perfect. You stop needing the praise, the permission, the applause. And you start creating from the core. You start showing up because you decided to. Not because it feels good. Not because it's guaranteed to work, but because it's who you are now. So if you're here, if you're at the bottom, good. Not because it's easy, but because it's honest. And what you build from here will be real. No performance, no mask, no hollow ambition. Just you. Clear, focused, free. This is where the work begins. This is where the fire gets kindled, not with comfort, but with clarity. Not with vision boards, not with morning affirmations, but with the raw, unfiltered voice inside you that says, "No one's coming, so I will." You want a new life? Start here. Start at the bottom. And don't just climb out, build something here. Something no one can take. Something that will survive the next collapse and the one after that. Because this isn't the end. This is your foundation. This is where you become unbreakable. They'll call it a lucky break when they see you again. When you show back up cleaner, sharper, more focused, they'll say you were lucky to get through it. That the timing worked out. That somehow the universe gave you a pass. Because they didn't see the nights you stayed awake, wondering if this version of you would ever return. They didn't see the bruises, the bills, the buried emotions. They only see what's visible now, the result. But you know what it cost. You know what it really takes. Because there's no such thing as a lucky break. There's just a person who didn't stop when it made the most sense to. There's just you, relentless in private, methodical in the shadows, choosing to rise again when it felt like no one would ever notice or care. People see the return, but they miss the repetition. The endless, invisible cycle of falling and adjusting, of failing and learning, of being told no 100 different ways and still showing up with a voice that says yes. Not because the world rewarded you, but because you trained yourself to move anyway. That's what nobody tells you when you're starting. This isn't a game of breakthroughs. It's a game of staying in motion. Staying in motion when the motivation is gone. Staying in motion when the rewards don't come. Staying in motion when nothing around you looks like progress. Because motion is more important than momentum. Momentum can vanish in a day. But motion consistent, stubborn, deliberate motion, that's what separates the hopeful from the inevitable. You don't become undeniable by accident. You become undeniable through volume, through effort that piles up like bricks no one sees until one day they look up and realize you built a fortress around your discipline. And maybe they'll ask how you did it. They'll want to know how you made the comeback, how you rebuilt, how you climbed out from a hole they'd already buried you in. And you'll tell them the truth they're not ready to hear. I didn't wait for the right time. I just never stopped. Because you didn't need certainty. You didn't need confidence. You just needed one thing, repetition with integrity. The kind that lives below talent, below charm, below hype. The kind of integrity that says, I said I would, so I did. Even when no one was watching. Even when it didn't feel inspiring. Even when the result was years away. And this is what turns the average into something permanent. And this is what builds the foundation that no failure can shake. You stopped aiming for perfect days. You started stringing together present ones. Imperfect, messy, gritty, real days. Where nothing clicked, but everything moved. Because that's the trap. Waiting for a spark, waiting for alignment, waiting for the myth of flow. But fire doesn't start by accident. It's built by friction. Strike after strike after strike, until one day it catches. And even then, it only stays lit if you feed it. With sweat, with structure, with scars. You learn that the real difference isn't between those who win and those who lose. It's between those who stop and those who repeat. Repetition is what turns survival into strategy. Repetition is what makes broken things functional again. Repetition is how you recover your rhythm when life breaks your pace. And when you look at the ones who have what you want, who are living at a level you thought was out of reach, know this. They didn't get there by talent alone. They didn't get there by knowing the right people. They got there by showing up when it didn't make sense to show up anymore. They got there by moving through the middle. The long, painful, unspectacular middle where there's no spotlight, no certainty, and no end in sight. That's the stretch that breaks most people. The part where you've done everything right and nothing's happening. But the ones who win, they know that nothing happening means something's building. They know that every quiet step forward is a brick being laid. They know that if they keep laying bricks, the wall will rise. They trust the process not because it feels good, but because they made it their identity. And if you're there now, in the middle, in the void, in that cold stretch between effort and evidence, know this. You're doing it right. It's not supposed to feel magical. It's supposed to feel thankless. Because this is where the muscle grows. This is where your instinct sharpens. This is where discipline stops being a strategy and becomes your spine. You keep moving, not because you know it's working, but because you're working. You keep moving, not because you're being watched, but because you're watching. You keep moving, because what's the alternative? To sit still and rot? To surrender to the drift? To hand your life over to chance and blame the wind? Number. You weren't built to drift. You were built to design. And design requires repetition. Design requires that you don't just get back up, but that you get back to work. That you don't just mourn the setback, but that you refine your steps. That you don't just fantasize about a comeback, but that you show up for it daily. This is the hidden truth behind every overnight success. It wasn't one night. It was 1,000 invisible ones. 1,000 quiet choices. 1,000 repetitions made in faith. Faith in yourself. Faith in the craft. Faith that showing up is the highest form of belief. So when they call you lucky, let them. Smile not because they're right, but because they don't know what you know. They don't know what it took. They don't know how many times you almost quit. They don't know the hours you spent rebuilding in silence. And they don't have to, because you didn't do it for credit. You did it because you refused to leave your life in the hands of chance. You did it because you've already been to the bottom and you're not going back. You did it because repetition became your rebellion. Because consistency became your courage. Because you're not here to be remembered for one moment. You're here to become unshakable. They say success leaves clues. But they forget to mention that failure leaves instructions. Clear, direct, brutal instructions written in pain, missed chances, and burned bridges. Instructions that don't flatter you. Instructions that don't coddle your ego or pat you on the back. Instructions that speak only one language, truth. And here's the first truth you learn from failure. Your potential means nothing if it's never tested. You can be talented, smart, gifted, respected. But until life punches you in the face, until everything you thought you had unravels in your hands, you don't know anything. You don't know what you can take. You don't know how deep your drive runs. You don't know if you've been building a legacy or just feeding a fantasy. Because when failure hits, everything superficial dies fast. The image, the facade, the version of you built for likes, applause, or external approval. Gone. And underneath it all is the only thing that was ever real. Your decision to continue. Not your plan. Not your charisma, not your confidence. Just your raw, beaten down, pressure-forged will to move forward anyway. That's where transformation lives. Not in the concept of growth, but in the confrontation of self. Failure forces you to meet yourself stripped of story. No filters, no noise, no distractions. Just you. The truth and the choice. Now what? You can lie to the world, but failure removes the luxury of lying to yourself, because it holds a mirror that doesn't blink. And in that mirror, you'll see every shortcut you took, every excuse you leaned on, every time you let comfort outrun responsibility. You'll see all of it. And still, if you have the guts, you'll choose to keep going. Not in denial. Not pretending the fall didn't hurt, but because you finally understand. This is what becoming actually looks like. Becoming isn't glamorous. It's not a montage of progress and protein shakes and motivational quotes. It's sitting in the mess, the debt, the doubt, the disappointment, and saying, "Fine, let's get to work." It's choosing responsibility over reassurance, accountability over avoidance, action over analysis, because failure teaches you that you don't need more information. You need more execution. You don't rise by thinking harder. You rise by doing it again, smarter. The second truth failure teaches is that greatness is repetition of courage. Not a moment, not a single win, but a pattern of choosing bravery in the face of bad odds. The willingness to stand up after the punch, to try again when the cost is higher, to trust yourself when the last try broke you open. That's the curriculum. Pain is the teacher. Failure is the entrance exam. And most people fail it not because they aren't smart, but because they refuse to learn. They take failure personally, emotionally, as identity. They fold, retreat, reinvent themselves as victims. But victims don't build. Victims don't adapt. Victims wait for rescue. You? You're done waiting. Because no one is coming. Not to fix it. Not to hold your hand. Not to make it fair. So you become the thing you needed. The rescue. The plan. The push. The reason. You stop looking for someone to carry you. You start reinforcing your own spine. And you realize, failure didn't stop you. It introduced you to who you needed to become. The kind of person who doesn't need external validation to move. The kind of person who doesn't need to feel good to take action. The kind of person who understands the pain is the price. And if the pain's already here, you may as well earn something from it. So you gather it up, every lesson, every misstep, every hard truth, and you turn it into something no one can take away. Wisdom. And that wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't flaunt. It doesn't preach. It moves differently. It shows up early and stays late. It listens before it speaks. It trains when no one's watching. It chooses the hard road, not because it's noble, but because it's necessary. Wisdom knows shortcuts are always expensive, and no path that's real will come without risk. So you lean into risk not recklessly, but resolutely. Because now, you've paid for your lessons. And you're not going to let that tuition go to waste. And that's what makes you powerful. Not your perfection, not your certainty, but your relationship with failure. You stopped fearing it. You stopped avoiding it. You started inviting it as a teacher, as a mirror, as a necessary part of the climb. You no longer ask, "What if I fail?" You ask, "What will I learn when I do?" And in that question, there's no shame. There's strategy. Because every mistake now feeds your map. Every setback reprograms your system. Every scar refines your standard. Failure becomes less of a blow and more of a calibration. Less of a collapse, more of a course correction. You fail forward. Fail sharper. Fail into growth. Fail with awareness. Fail in such a way that you're always a little stronger after the fall than you were before it. And what used to paralyze you, now it sharpens you. The silence, peace. The pressure, clarity. The risk, fuel. Because you've earned this mindset. With blood, with time, with every night you didn't quit when quitting would have made more sense. Now, you move different. You carry the fire not because you never got burned, but because you learned how to walk with it. You don't play for comfort. You play for character. And character isn't built in the win. It's revealed in the wreckage. So wreck if you must. Break it all down. Let the old models fail. Let the weak systems collapse. Let the false identities disintegrate. Let it all fall. And when the dust settles and the silence returns, and the pain fades just enough for you to see clearly again, build. Smarter. Cleaner. Louder. Wiser. Because every failure is a map. And now you know how to read it. You can't rewrite the rules until you learn them. Not the rules they teach in school. Not the polite ones printed in employee manuals or posted in boardrooms. I'm talking about the real rules, the ones written in silence, betrayal, missed calls, and broken contracts. The ones you discover when your plans collapse and all that's left is the raw game of survival. The world runs on a set of unofficial laws. And you don't get to ignore them just because they offend your sense of fairness. Number. First, you learn them. Then you master them. And then if you've got the courage, you rewrite them. But only after you've lived through them. Only after you've had the deal fall apart the day before signing. Only after the opportunity you waited months for evaporates overnight. Only after you've built something that should have worked and watched it fail anyway. Only then do you understand the truth. The world does not respond to effort. The world responds to leverage. And effort alone won't save you. Not anymore. Effort gets you in the game. Awareness keeps you alive. But leverage, that's what changes everything. And leverage begins with understanding the rules they don't print. Rules like, the moment you need something too much, it controls you. The more perfect the plan, the more likely it will fail. The people who promise the most will disappear first. The reward often comes after the breaking point, not before it. If you don't define your own standards, someone else will, and you won't like theirs. These aren't just quotes. They're patterns. Patterns that repeat themselves until you finally stop asking why and start asking how. How can I move through this? How can I build something that doesn't break the first time the rules change? How can I stop hoping the system bends to my will and start building a system inside myself that doesn't depend on outside conditions? Because here's the truth. You don't win by escaping the rules. You win by understanding the terrain they create and then building a path no one else saw. But to do that, you've got to stop waiting for fairness. Fairness is the language of those still looking for permission. You don't need fairness. You need strategy. You need to see what others miss. You need to listen when others complain. Because hidden in every complaint is a map of how the world really works. They say the system is rigged. Good. That means it can be read. And once you learn how to read it, you start seeing the moves that others don't. You stop playing defense. You start shaping the game. But make no mistake that knowledge comes at a cost. It costs you your innocence. It costs you the comfort of assuming good effort equals good results. It costs you the fantasy that doing the right thing guarantees the right outcome. Number. Sometimes you do everything right and still get wrecked. Sometimes you follow the formula and still get forgotten. Sometimes you love fully and still get left. And when that happens, you've got a choice. You can throw away the blueprint, or you can go deeper. Because underneath the disappointment is a second layer of truth, that you can become the kind of person who moves through a rigged system and wins anyway. The kind of person who doesn't rely on rules made by people who never cared about your outcome. The kind of person who learns the laws of chaos and makes peace with them not because you approve, but because you refuse to be surprised anymore. And that lack of surprise? That's your edge. Because most people spend their whole lives reacting. Shocked that things don't work like they're supposed to. Stuck in cycles of confusion and bitterness and rage. But not you. You've been through too much to be shocked. You've seen how this plays out. So you stop trying to make the world make sense. You start building systems that work in spite of the nonsense. You start choosing principles over feelings. You start choosing action over outrage. You start choosing ownership over blame. And slowly, the power begins to shift. You stop being the one waiting for a break. You become the one making them. You stop hoping for mercy. You start creating margin, the kind that absorbs shocks, adapts to crisis, and moves under pressure. That's not luck. That's earned clarity. And that clarity leads to something rare. You start writing your own rules. Not as rebellion, but as design. Not because you want to play God, but because you're tired of playing victim. And the rules you write are simple, sharp, and unforgiving. I don't expect things to go right. I build in the assumption they won't. I train for failure, not fantasy. I prepare for people to leave, and make peace with walking alone. I treat my vision like it's fragile, because it is, and that's why I protect it with everything I've got. These are not affirmations. These are weapons. Not to attack others, but to defend the life you're building against the entropy that's always coming for it. Because if the world is going to run on rules that don't care about your feelings, then you'd better create some rules that do. Not for the world to follow, but for you. And once you do, once you start living by the internal laws forged in your own experience, you stop being at the mercy of everything outside you. You stop being tossed around by the market, by relationships, by chance, by mood, by fear. Because now, when something breaks, you don't break with it. When something leaves, you don't fall apart. When the system fails, you don't. Why? Because your foundation was never built on someone else's structure. It was built on the only thing you could control all along. Your response. And that's how you rewrite the rules. Not by shouting louder. Not by begging for fairness. But by becoming a force that doesn't bend in the first place. You won't be understood at first. You won't be popular. You won't be liked by everyone. But you'll be free. And in a world that runs on rules written by fear and distraction, that freedom, that's the ultimate rebellion. You're going to lose, people. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you're not enough, but because the higher you climb, the more the air thins and not everyone is built for it. You start building discipline, and suddenly you're too intense. You start telling the truth, and now you're difficult. You stop complaining, stop blaming, stop waiting, and people get uncomfortable because you're no longer playing the game the way they do. Good. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to wake up. And waking up costs you the crowd. You don't get to grow and stay the same. You don't get to lead and stay liked. You don't get to rise and keep every comfort. You want elevation? Then get ready for exile. Not from the world, but from the old version of yourself. The version that needed permission. The version that made excuses. The version that stayed quiet to keep the peace. That version dies here. Because there comes a point in every journey where you stop negotiating with your potential. Where you stop softening your words to make others feel safe. Where you stop dimming your fire to keep people from feeling burned. That's not growth, that's self-abandonment. And you've done it long enough. You've lowered your standards to fit the room. You've swallowed your instincts to keep harmony. You've betrayed your vision in the name of being agreeable. But not anymore. Now, you choose truth over approval. Now, you choose strength over safety. Now, you choose alignment over acceptance. And yes, that means people will leave. People who liked you better when you were smaller. People who preferred the version of you who didn't challenge them. People who don't want to see you change because it reminds them they haven't. Let them go. Their absence is not your failure, it's your filter. It's how you make room for the ones who are actually aligned with your mission, your mindset, your movement forward. Because you don't need an audience. You need allies. You don't need claps. You need commitment from yourself first. And that means staying grounded when you're misunderstood, holding your line when others flinch, moving forward even when the path feels cold, quiet, and lonely as hell. Because it will. That's what no one tells you when you start becoming real. They tell you to follow your passion. They tell you to be authentic. But they don't tell you that being real might cost you every surface-level connection you thought was real too. It's not the climb that breaks people. It's the space it creates between who you were and who you're becoming. That space? That's where people fall off. Some go quietly. Some go violently. Some go with a parting shot meant to pull you back down to their level. Let them. You don't fight to hold on to what's already detaching. You don't beg people to see you clearly when they were committed to misunderstanding you. You don't carry dead weight out of guilt. You rise, alone if you must, because this is not the path for the fragile. This is the path for those who have decided, I will not shrink to survive. You've done that before. You've played small. You've played dumb. You've played weak so others didn't feel insecure around your fire. Never again. Now you burn. And the ones who are meant for the heat, they'll rise with you. The rest, they'll try to cool you down. And you'll let them leave. This isn't ego. This is clarity. Clarity that you're not here to be palatable. You're here to be powerful. Clarity that not every relationship is meant to go the distance. Some are here to reveal what you've outgrown. Some are mirrors, some are tests, some are warnings, and some are teachers whose only lesson is, you deserve better. That's not bitterness, that's selective energy. You no longer hand out access like it costs nothing. You no longer apologize for your ambition. You no longer explain your evolution to those committed to staying the same. Because once you've rebuilt yourself from the rubble, once you've stood in the silence of failure and chosen yourself again, once you've paid the full price of transformation, you stop letting people rent pieces of your soul. You protect your time. You guard your peace. You lead your own life. And when someone steps into your space, they'll feel it. They'll feel the boundaries. They'll feel the standard. They'll feel the depth that only comes from someone who's been through hell and refused to come back empty-handed. So no, you don't chase anymore. You don't explain anymore. You don't plead for understanding. You walk your path, clear, focused, free. And if someone can't see you clearly from where they stand, tell them to climb. There's a kind of calm that doesn't come from meditation. It doesn't come from soft music, scented candles, or long walks under sunset skies. It comes from something much more brutal, much more permanent. It comes from walking through the fire and realizing you didn't burn. You didn't break. You didn't disappear. You survived. And not just barely. You came out knowing something most people spend their lives avoiding. That chaos doesn't have to kill you. In fact, it can clarify you. If you stop resisting it, if you stop fearing it, if you stop waiting for the storm to pass, and instead become someone who moves inside it. Because once you've seen what's on the other side of the worst day of your life, once you've faced the grief, the failure, the betrayal, the identity collapse and kept breathing, you become dangerous. Not in the loud way, not in the ego-driven way, but in the quiet, grounded, immovable way. Because you no longer need the world to behave in order to be at peace. You no longer depend on the illusion of stability to feel strong. You no longer crumble at the first sign of things going wrong because you expect them to. Not as a pessimist, as a realist, as someone who finally understands the truth that everyone eventually learns, too late. Control is a myth, preparation is a mindset, and composure is a superpower. You learn that fear doesn't go away, but your relationship with it changes. It becomes data, feedback, a signal that you're stepping into something real. And when you stop treating fear like a stop sign, When you stop making comfort your compass, when you stop building your life around avoiding pain, you start to move with a different rhythm. You move without flinching. You speak without shrinking. You lead without waiting. Because you've met chaos and made it your teacher. You've made decisions with shaking hands. You've taken steps when you couldn't see the ground. You've stood still while everything fell apart and chose not to run. And now, you're calm. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Calm is what happens when you know exactly how far you can fall and what you'll do when you hit the bottom. Calm is what happens when you've lost before and rebuilt anyway. Calm is what happens when nothing can surprise you, because you stopped expecting the path to be smooth. You stopped treating setbacks as violations. You started treating them as invitations to refine, to adapt, to respond like someone who remembers who they are. That's real presence. That's real leadership. Because leaders don't need certainty. They need stability of mind. The ability to hold their ground while others spiral. The ability to move forward when plans go up in smoke. The ability to stay focused, sharp, intentional when everyone else is looking for someone to blame. This is not about being cold. It's about being anchored. Because when you're anchored, you're not thrown by every wave. You don't collapse every time the forecast shifts. You don't need reassurance to keep showing up. You know that chaos is not the enemy. It's the terrain. And when you train for the terrain instead of fighting it, you move with more freedom, not less. More purpose, not less. More peace, not because the world is quiet, but because you are. And that peace becomes your competitive edge. Because while others wait for conditions to be perfect, while they wait for timing, for energy, for support, for clarity, you move anyway. You don't panic. You plan. You don't react. You respond. You don't crumble under pressure. You compress time. You get more done in crisis than most people get done in comfort. Not because you're gifted, but because you trained in the dark. You trained while everything went wrong. You trained when the noise was loud and the path was unclear. You trained when nobody believed in you, and you kept believing in yourself anyway. That's what built this calm. Not the wins, not the praise, the chaos. You didn't just survive it. You built with it. So now, when people look at you and ask, "How are you so calm when everything's falling apart?" You don't explain. You don't lecture. You just smile and keep moving. Because that's the gift of chaos. It teaches you that panic is a choice. And so is poise. And so is presence. And so is showing up like the person who's already been through worse and came back with wisdom. So, let it shake. Let it fall. Let the noise rise and the plan dissolve. You've seen this movie before. And this time, you're not rattled. This time, you're not clinging. This time, you're ready. Because you didn't wait for peace to find you. You became it. You're not here to win every time. You're here to outlast. Because if life was about clean victories and predictable endings, the strongest people would be the smartest, the ones with the best plans, the most polished resumes, the sharpest scripts. But that's not how it works. This world belongs to the ones who get back up with blood in their mouth and clarity in their eyes, the ones who know the storm doesn't care about your preparation and the mountain doesn't care how much you want it. You earn your rise in the way you carry your setbacks. You want a breakthrough? Then take the weight. Take the injuries to your ego. The silence from the people you thought would show up. the slow death of your excuses. Take all of it and move anyway. That's the mark of someone who's not just motivated, but transformed. You don't need it to feel good anymore. You don't need it to look perfect. You don't need anyone to see how hard you're working. Because you're not chasing recognition, you're becoming a force. A force that doesn't beg to be noticed. A force that moves in silence and builds in the dark. A force that doesn't ask for the weather to clear but shows up anyway, soaked and steady. Because you've learned by now, this game isn't about control. It's about endurance. Endurance through doubt. Endurance through confusion. Endurance through those long seasons where everything is unclear and everything inside you is screaming for certainty. But you don't wait for certainty anymore. You create movement out of decision, not out of proof. You no longer need evidence to validate your effort. You just need a reason. And your reason is you. The version of you that didn't quit. The version that kept writing, showing up, training, building, believing, even when nothing clapped, nothing changed, and no one cared. That version, that's who carries you when momentum disappears. That's who shows up when motivation dies. That's who finishes the story when everything else is burned. You've become the kind of person who doesn't rely on conditions. You rely on conviction. And conviction is earned. Earned in the way you kept walking after everything collapsed. Earned in the nights you sat in silence and chose to believe anyway. Earned in the mornings you showed up when no one would have blamed you for staying down. And now, there's nothing left to prove because you've already proven it to yourself. That's the only proof that matters. And yes, the path is hard. Yes, it will get lonely. Yes, there will be moments you question if it's still worth it. But that's the price of building a life that doesn't fall apart when other people leave. That's the price of becoming someone who doesn't need the world to make sense in order to move. That's the price of power. Not the kind handed down by titles or trophies, but the kind built in solitude. The kind no one sees until it's too late to stop. So, no, this isn't about some final destination. There's no golden gate. No, you've made it sign. There's just the next step. And the one after that. And the one after that with your hands dirty, your chest burning, your mind sharp. Because what you've built can't be measured in numbers or followers or fame. It's measured in who you became when nothing worked and you showed up anyway. This is the final transformation. You are no longer chasing the win. You are no longer seeking the light. You are no longer waiting for the conditions to say yes. You are the condition now. You are the storm. You are the reason. You are the steady pulse beneath the chaos. The quiet fire that outlives the trends. The relentless force that rebuilds in silence, repeats in darkness, and rises without noise. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them whisper that you got lucky. Let them miss the thousands of hours it took to become this version of you. Because they never saw the fall. They never heard the cracks in your voice when you said, "I'm not done." They never felt the weight you carried in silence. They only see what you are now, unshakable. So if you're still climbing, if you're still hurting, if you're still rebuilding brick by brutal brick, let me tell you something they won't. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not late. You're becoming. And becoming doesn't come with applause. It comes with war. A war you fight every day against doubt, fear, apathy, and all the voices trying to drag you back to average. But you're not average anymore. You're not explainable. You're not predictable. You're reborn. Because everything that was meant to destroy you, built you. And now, you carry it all, the failure, the pain, the silence as armor. Not as scars, not as wounds, but as proof that you were here and you rose.